the Mobile Commodore and going it alone today. From 4 is car number 1, Jim Richards in the JPS BMW. From position 5 is car 3, John Harvey and Neil Lowe in the second of the Mobile Commodores. From 6 is car number 11, Larry Perkins in the NZ Connectors Commodore. From position 7 is car number 8, Warren Cullen and Gary Sprague in another Commodore. From position 8, car number 36, Murray Carter and Bill O'Brien in the Skyline Turbo. From position 9, car number 7, Charlie O'Brien in the Bob Jane BMW. From 10, car number 41, Denny Holm in the Bob Janes Martins Mercedes 190E. Position 11 is car number 23, Graham Lustig and Ken Lustig in a Commodore. And for position number 12, rounding out the dozen, car number 4, Peter McLeod and Glenn Clark in the rebuilt Commodore.
So now Alan Moffat slows the field down into a formation. As I said, 34 cars, a very healthy entry. Only a few points separates Team Nissan from the JPS BMW team as we go into this second last round of the Australian Endurance Championship. George Fury in car number 30, his original car 30. Weren't happy with the way the new car was progressing, as now the pace car pulls off and these drivers form up for a start. If they get a green light, they'll be off and running for 125 exciting laps around Calder Park. And the green light is on, the field away. And George Fury leads the field as they go down towards the bottom of the straight for the first time, with Kiwi Graham Crosby on the outside, now tucking in behind him. Peter Brock up into third place, then Larry Perkins, followed by Jim Richards, as George peels right at the right-hander through Valvoline. Richards forced out wide into fourth place. Perkins trying to poke the nose of the Commodore through, but it's George Fury who leads the field. Fury to the hump for the first time. 2 car lengths over Crosby. A dry track, very windy though as they head down the back straight, and these cars have had little or no testing time in dry conditions in the last few days owing to the very bad weather here in Melbourne. Crosby in second still from Peter Brock in third position, car 05, and Crosby using 17-inch Yokohama tyres today for the first time, because he'll be teaming up in 2 weeks' time at Mount Fuji in Japan with Alan Grice, the recent winner of the James Hardy 1000. Coming around to end lap number 1. There's Jim Richards running very wide in the BMW, and one of the cars running very wide and heading towards the pit lane was John Harvey. End of lap 1. Fury the leader at 30 from Graham Crosby, Peter Brock, Jim Richards, Larry Perkins, Warren Cullen and Charlie O'Brien, the next driver through in car 7. And Brock now challenges on the inside as they go to the right-hander. Well, John Bauer, guest commentator for us this afternoon, not out there for the Volvo team, but what an exciting start.
It's very interesting, Neil. The fact that the rolling start's the first time it's ever been used in Australia, and it made for a nice clean start without any biffing and bashing, which normally goes on in these sort of races. So I think that's something that may continue in Australian touring car racing, and I think it would be a good thing from my point of view.
Certainly saving a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of panel damage as the drivers move away on their second lap, 125 in total. And there's the Harvey car in the pits.
We're looking at George Fury and Peter Brock running 1-2 here. Marginal difference between the two cars in qualifying. George has the advantage of being in front, clean air, and he can run the race at the pace he wants, but I suspect Peter's frame of mind, he wants to get past that Nissan and onto the straight himself.
Is Peter running Bridgestone tyres?
A combination of Bridgestone and Dunlop, so we're 50-50. Bridgestone's on the front and Dunlop's on the back. It's a development that transpired at Bathurst, and we've got the best of both worlds, front and rear.
George Fury's just lapped in 61.46 seconds, which is almost equal to the touring car lap record, and that's with a full tank of fuel. It's pretty good going, isn't it, so far?
That's excellent. But it's turned out a nice day, and without any liquid sunshine on the track, they're able to perform in top pace. We're seeing the pace of the Nissan Skyline, the turbos.
2.5 seconds now between George Fury and Peter Brock. The problem with John Harvey's car when he came to the pits just a lap or so ago was an apparent misfire, which they haven't been able to trace. The team manager, Neil Lowe, at present suspected that there may have been some kind of a fuel block and there'd been some dirty fuel go through the car. So John Harvey out and circulating once more. As George Fury leads towards the bottom of the straight. Graham Crosby got a very good start. third place, Graham Crosby, car number 6 in the Bob Jane T-Mart's entry, 61.25 in qualifying for second position on the front row of the grid. A little unlucky recently for James Hardy 1000, where they had drive shaft problems with this car, but has been very competitive all year throughout the Australian Touring Car Championship, carrying Seven's race cam, and at times, Alan Moffat, even giving the Holden dealer team something to think about.
Yes, I'm very impressed, and a young fellow with all those novice miles behind him on the motorbike, he's got a big career ahead of him.
An ex-Formula One World Motorcycle Champion, and finished second in the 1982 World 500cc Road Racing Championships behind Kenny Roberts, rode for the Marlboro Yamaha team, and to this day remains a megastar in Japan and throughout Europe because of his two-wheeled exploits. And in fact, in 2 weeks' time, we'll join Alan Grice at Mount Fuji as we look here at Murray Calder in car number 36 in one of the privateer turbo skyline entries with some damage on the front left-hand side of the car. Certainly an unscheduled stop. And I would suggest may have done some damage to the front left tyre and has come in and changed wheels. Graham Crosby enjoys a 3.8 second lead at the moment over Larry Perkins in the NZ entry. And the gap between leader George Fury and Peter Brock is now out to 4.96 seconds, so near as damn it to 5 seconds. It seems to be now just stabilising. To Calder Park in Melbourne, where the most ferocious electrical and thunderstorm has just swept through the place. The entire circuit, the television, the lap scoring, and all of the surroundings went off power for quite some time. The situation now, with still a very wet track as you can see, sees George Fury leading in car number 30 after having pitted and put on a full set of wet tyres on this car, and enjoys a gap over Peter Brock of something like around about 11 or 12 seconds. Brock is on the same lap, lap 64. In fact, George now off on his 65th lap out of 125. Then 1 lap down, we have Gary Scott in car number 15, being pursued by Jim Richards, who's made 2 stops in the JPS BMW. Then right behind Jim Richards, we had car number 11, Larry Perkins. And then 2 laps down on those drivers, we have Warren Cullen in car number 8, followed then by Graham Crosby in car number 6, Charlie O'Brien in car number 7. And then in car number 23 is the Lusty Engineering entry of Graham and Ken Lusty, followed then by car number 3, the second of the mobile team cars being driven today by John Harvey. Lap time then for Peter Brock was 75 seconds. So he's starting to pull the times back down again. I'll be interested now to put the clock on George Fury and see what kind of a split we get. Fury enjoying, in vague terms, about a 3/4 lap lead at the moment over Peter Brock.
I wouldn't think that Fury would be going much faster than that. Fury's tyres are starting to deteriorate now because it's quite a dry line in places.
Well, even though the sky looks horrible, the sun has been out now for well over 10 minutes, and there is a distinct dry patch developing on the fast line on the groove, and we have the 2 mobile cars running side by side, not 1-2 on the race. But
John Harvey's actually done a very good job here of catching team leader Peter Brock, and you can see that he's got some extra speed and wants to use it. Brocky says go for it.
Sure, that's what the difference between the right tires and the right occasion. John's got his the rain tires on, which he's shifted to at the pit stop earlier in the race, and is able to plant that power down and squirt through the corners. So Peter is still tippy-toeing around. He's cooling his tires off down the side,
the wet line, sorry, yeah.
Taking the wet line, just giving them a bit of a cool down, a little bit. So this like really, a shower on a hot day.
This really is a total mirror, isn't it? One guy's trying to cool his tires off because they're overheating. The other guy's trying to find some dry road. Incidentally, Fury's gone around in 71.9 seconds, so he's about 4 seconds a lap faster still than Peter.
Yes.
And as we mentioned at the head of the show, the way things are shaping up at the moment in the battle for the manufacturer's title is very much down to these 2 brands of cars, the Nissan being driven by Scott and the BMW being driven by Richards and his teammate Tony Longhurst. Jim's best performance so far in this series, if my memory serves me correctly, was a brilliant win in the first round at Amaru Park, where you gave us a hand in the commentary, John. He backed up then with a second at Surfers Paradise.
I think the conditions would suit Jim better if it really rained, but there's now quite a dry line, and it'll be a toss-up which is better, the wets or the dry tyres. And obviously, as it goes on, it's going to suit the the dry tyres more.
The dries have definitely got it at the moment.
Yeah, Brocky may have done the right thing.
Peter McLeod in car number 4, the Auto Hard Commodore. The last time we saw that on television, the whole front right-hand side of the car was missing, having taken a rather dangerous excursion into the sand of McPhillamy up at the top of the mountain at Bathurst. The car lost a wheel, tore the front off it. Oh, and McLeod in strife. Understeers straight off the road, was all out of shape that time. In fact, it is Glenn Clark in the car. I can tell by the helmet. Glenn's the Kiwi driver who does most of the engineering on this car and has worked very hard. And there's Cesario getting into the Ignis Alpha. Lap 78 out of 125 for the Sun South Pacific 300. Not too much sun out there at the moment, I can tell you. And Cesario gets into the little Alpha, which at last count was in 24th position on the road. The other thing that we've just noticed about to enter the pits is one of the Nissans. Car number 30 in the pits, and George Fury getting out of the lead Nissan, giving the car to young Glenn Seaton.
The back of the car is up in the air still. There they go down. He's got slicks on.
He has got slicks.
40 laps to go. A new driver, new tyres. This is going to be interesting.
There's their second team car coming in as well, car 15.
Unreal. Okay, everybody's gone for the dry tyres, and Peter Brock's still out there now in the lead.
Brock may have done it again. A nice bit of foresight to see through the weather, as it were.
We learned the hard way in Europe on this one, Neil, and came in every time it sneezed and lost a lot of races to the professional teams in Europe because of this very move. And Peter never forgets anything when it stings him, and he's been out there today treading very carefully on dry tires, as we now see Glenn Seaton doing the same.
And Jim Richards now coming into the pits on lap 83.
Well, my reckoning has Peter leading Glenn Seaton by 13 seconds. And that might be very, very tight to try and get 4 tires on a Commodore in 13 seconds.
Brock's coming to the pits in car 05. The team will prepare themselves now for what they hope to be a very rapid stop. Let me see, what sort of tyres do we have here? 4 slick tyres standing by Alan Moffat. And this is the crucial stop of the race. There goes the Nissan in the background. Car number 30 now goes to the lead. So this really tells the story of the race. Stand by with the stopwatches. We'll get an idea on how long the stop will take. Remember the slowdown time that it's taken Brock.
Should be no longer than 25 seconds. The Mobile Hold Dealer team mechanics are amongst the fastest. We had the fastest stomp at Sandown. We were certainly quick at Bathurst. Peter having a fast strength. 4 tires going on. The fuel will already be sufficient. As soon as she goes down, that car's going to be doing 100 before he hits the ground. There he goes.
25.5 seconds for Peter Brock. An excellent stop from the Mobile team. Back out on slick tyres, 3 churns of fuel, 40 litres each, and they're back in business. We'll now try and establish a gap between Glenn Seaton, the leader, and Peter Brock. John Bow, that was an excellent stop.
Fantastic stop. He's got a problem, though. It may have just been the cold tyre.
Yeah, it locked up the tyre there on the opening lap. That's one of the problems with cold tyres. The brakes are warm, and they're doing their job, and the tyres are saying, hey, hang on, we're not ready for all this activity. And locking up a tyre on the first lap of exit happened a lot to us in the 24-hour race, and it's one of those things that we've got to be extremely careful with on the opening lap.
Do you have any problem with flat spotting with a lock-up like that?
Just once. He would have, well, he's got another one. He's not fooling around. He's aware that he's got to catch Glenn Seaton, and he's pushing it, but as long as he doesn't do it for more than 2 laps, it won't settle in a pattern. Really, a flat spot like that has to come in.
Oh, and look, the 15 car is off. Is that Gary Scott or Terry Shield?
Terry Shield, I think.
They came in and made a stop. Just check the gap now between leader and Peter Brock as Brock comes down the straight. And I make it at about 50 seconds. So in space terms, we're talking about almost 3/4 of a lap.
Putting in a fine drive here today. Got caught initially with the tire brigade. You have to be Houdini to figure out what the weather was going to do here this afternoon. Wiper's still going, but he's holding a good 6th place at the moment, and that's a credit to the effort that goes into this NZ car.
Car owned by Colin Giltrap of New Zealand, and after next weekend's touring car race at the Australian Grand Prix, this car will be sold, and Larry getting it all cocked sideways as he comes onto the straight. Great controller of a car, though, knows what he's doing. But he'll have a fresh car for the next motor racing season, and in fact is hoping to do the New Zealand series. There's a lot of racing coming up in New Zealand towards the end of this year, and then there'll be the Nissan Mobile series early in January.
February, yep.
Locks up at front right, and John Bow, down comes the rain again.
Well, it's been threatening to do that for the last 10 minutes, Neil, and it looks like it's coming down. If it really rains, as it did earlier in the race, we could have some very interesting things happen, but I don't think it will. The sky is quite bright.
The gap between Glenn Seaton, who is still leading this race, is down to 22 seconds between himself and Peter Brock, and every drop of rain that hits this circuit now is to the Commodore driver's advantage. A big deluge now would be the end of the race for Glenn Seaton.
Well, Glenn's had two moments. There's Peter Brock. That's the gap. So as Seaton approaches the main straight, Brock halfway up the back straight, entering the braking area, still locking that front right hand. And of course, Seaton having had two fairly hairy moments, one up the back straight where he had to pull the car to a virtual stop, the other at the top of the circuit, right where Peter Brock is now, where he spun the Nissan Turbo. Real pressure on the youngster. Bob Holden in car number 13, the Toyota Sprinter, doing a sterling job in these treacherous conditions. He had some problems earlier on, you notice, and just signals there for the Denny Holm Mercedes 190 AMG car to go through on the inside. 53 years of age, a real veteran of Australian motor racing, and I recall a few years ago, Alan Moffat went very close to almost topping you for the Australian Endurance Championship, quite strangely, when we had a funny points bias. From Manly Vale in Sydney, has done a lot of racing, goes back to the early 1960s.
Yes, in terms of sheer miles to the racetrack, I think Bob Holden has done more work for Australian motorsport than a lot of us put together. He competes everywhere and thinks nothing of the inconvenience of driving overnight, towing the car to the circuit, and to his credit, his car is always running at the finish.
Leaving the pits there in a big hurry is Charlie O'Brien in the ex-Schnitzer BMW, being managed this weekend by Greg Pee-wee Siddle. This is the car that ran second at the James Hardy last year in the hands of Roberto Ravaglia.
Before that stop, Neil, he was in 7th place, so they're going fairly well.
A good run from them so far.
He's a very experienced man in touring cars, Charlie. He's actually a very good competitor in all forms of racing. I raced against him in '82 in a Rolt, and for a very big, heavy guy, he made a fine fist of it.
Well, these BMWs are notoriously competitive in long-distance races, and we're getting down to the business end of this race now. 17 laps to go. Well, that's our race leader, Glenn Seaton, car number 30. Could be up now for his second big victory of the year in the Endurance Championship through the back straight S's. And Peter Brock, meanwhile, is at the bottom of the circuit. I'm checking the gap again between these two drivers.
I've said before, Neil, I know that I raced against Glenn and Amaru a couple of times, and I really had the pressure on him in the Volvo a couple of times. And he doesn't wilt. For a 21-year-old, he really is a terrific driver.
You had a great scrap with him in, I think, the third round of the Better Break Series at Amaru. It was an absolute ripper. 16.5 seconds now between these two leading drivers. Glenn Seaton, 21 years of age. Peter Brock, 41 years of age.
Fred Gibson are just having detuned enough whereby he doesn't throw the car away.
And there's Freddie and George having a discussion. They're happy with each other. And
through Valvoline now for the last time for Glenn Seaton. A very sensible drive for him. A brilliant job by George Fury. Still talking about a 15 or 16 second gap over Peter Brock, and it doesn't appear as though that's going to change now in the closing stages. And still Jim Richards in third position. A fine performance from the JPS driver.
Yes, well, it's looking easy here at the moment for Glenn, but we got to remember George did haul this car through the first 80 laps when it was anything but dry, and handed over a winning car to Glenn.
Last corner now through Glowweave for Glenn Seaton, and what should be the second big win of the year for the youngster, up onto the back of Glenn Clark in the Auto Part Commodore. Before him is Tony Longhurst, but he'll take this one quite comfortably as the checkered flag comes out, and Glenn Seaton is the winner of the Sun South Pacific 300 Touring Car Classic at Melbourne's Calder Park. A fine performance from him. And second place goes to Peter Brock. He's coming onto the straight now with his teammate John Harvey in car number 3. And it was just a case of fortune going against him, but still a brilliant drive from the maestro. And Jim Richards having already gone through one lap down, in fact, on the leaders for third position. Confirmation of placings on the Castrol scoreboard, and George Fury and Glenn Seaton take the South Pacific 300. Second place goes to Peter Brock, and third in the JPS BMW, Jim Richards.